So we have a range of questions that were sort of posed to everybody on the group, so I thought maybe we could start with you, Eva, and then kind of work our way down. And I think this first question is particularly apropos for many of those here in the audience and really for our sort of moment in time. And it's really around, like, how do you recover from failing publicly in a world with digital accountability, with Instagram and Twitter? And how do you deal with the reputational effect on you both in the moment, but sort of on your future self?
Oh, that's a hard question. When I applied here for this fellowship program where I'm in now for the first time, I got rejected and I was so sad. And what I did is maybe to get over this, I talked to everybody I knew, and I think I even posted on Twitter. And when I now, the second time, they called me and said, we would like to have you with us. I thought, wow, that's a mistake. They will call again and say, sorry, that was a mistake. We didn't mean you. Because you asked about Facebook and Twitter, I posted that as well. Because I just thought, wow, this is so weird. They call me, and of course, from now, I know, and I wouldn't think that they make such mistakes. It would be stupid to call someone and say, well, we take you, and then call again and say, sorry, that was a mistake. But at that situation, you really believe this is true, this can be true, or you tend to believe this is true more than you believe that you are really the one who's chosen. And I thought it might just help other people to know that this happens, I think, even to everybody, right? That you just think, wow, is that real? I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, they don't mean me. But yeah, sometimes they mean you. And sometimes they don't, and I think that's the second thing that belongs to failure, that you have to try. Many colleagues told me after the first time, I was so sad because it was so much work, and I already saw me here in that program, and it was a dream, and then they rejected me, and people said, well, but that belongs to the thing. If you don't try, you will never make it. And if you try, there is a risk that you will be rejected and that you will be sad. But you have to take that risk if you want to make it in the end.
Other thoughts on that question?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I feel like all the younger people have a huge, much harder than we did, like of an older generation. We didn't have all that back in the old days. So it wasn't true that everything, all your life, your failures were all publicly recorded.
That is true. I have a friend who unfortunately went through a pretty public, challenge, not at MIT, somewhere else. And he said something that was very interesting. He said, the people who matter to you actually don't care. And the people who care too much about your public image don't matter.
That's excellent. So a second question so a couple questions have come in and addressed the sort of the issue of imposter syndrome. And I'm curious if you can speak a little about, have you experienced this? What have you done? Are you still experiencing this? What examples or advice do you have for those of us in this audience who, are experts in our field but still feel that level of uncertainty?
I actually have an answer for that one. Okay, so I did have imposter syndrome just when I was a grad student. I was a grad student at Harvard, and yeah, I just thought, like, I knew I had the right credentials to be there, but I just didn't feel right about it. This advice someone else gave me, though, and I'll ask a lot of you, like, how often, I don't know if it's true for you but how often are you hard on yourself? Like, oh, I just messed that up. It's so bad. Like, compared to how many times you're, wow, I did great. Like, we never spend time reflecting on how well we did. But you have to really consciously make an effort to reflect on the good things you've done. When you have a paper, or you've given a talk, or something went well, or you did a great job being a TA that day. And you have to let that seep deep inside of you so you can own it. And that's actually the only way to force yourself out of imposter syndrome and to gain the confidence that you need to succeed.
I feel, I think we'll be dishonest if anybody comes to me and says they don't feel like an imposter at some point in their careers. I feel like an imposter all the time. One of my mentors said, every year he wakes up on 1st of January, he assumes that everything he has done in the past is not important, and what he's going to do this year is what matters. But more importantly, everybody else you're working with, also, you can assume this, use the same formula, assume everything else they have done doesn't matter. What matters is what they're doing from January 1st for that year. And that kind of resets everyone in the group.
I think what sometimes helps as well is just think about who is speaking at that moment. These inner voices, I think all of you know them. They are these inner doubters, the inner critique. And if you just ask yourself, if you have these moments where you have this doubter is too loud or the inner critic is too loud, just try to find out who is that, who is speaking. Is it this career counselor who was just wrong and I shouldn't listen to him? I think that helps as well.
Rodney, do you have?
Slightly, I mean, look, in places like this, I'm terrified. Absolute imposter, all that. Where I can give you slightly different angle. I've done a number of Make-A-Wishes, which I won't stretch out. But that's one where I struggle, because I'm like, oh my goodness, this poor dying kid. All I do is roll around. And this poor kid. And, I struggle with that. And each time, over a dozen of them, it's always such a profound message that I do carry with me. Is I go in there scared, like, I'm not all that, you know? I'm just, and all I want to do is just give you a hug and connect. You just connect as a human being, be who you are. Like, that, it vanishes, it evaporates so fast. Just be true, you know? So put yourself out there.
Young, do you have anything to contribute?
I'm still working on this.
Another question we've been asked is, how do you attain confidence learning a new subject where negative stereotypes against you keep speaking louder than your successes? Ron, do you?
Well, I don't think I've ever experienced that. I mean, when you learn a new subject, I would get worried if I wasn't scared, because I think it's a productive thing to give you feedback. While you were saying you sort of lose the edge of where's the limit, being able to sort of appreciate where you are and have a realistic sense of, here are the possibilities, that's where you should be. And getting overly confident is the scary thing, it seems to me. We all know in psychology there's that J-shaped curves of anxiety, that sort of being too anxious immobilizes you, but being the right amount of anxious is where you should be. And so the trick is how do you keep it in perspective and be on the edge where you're supposed to be? It doesn't bother me too much when it's something new. I expect to be anxious and uncomfortable and so forth until you get there.
How do others feel about that?
I was sitting at a conference, I was sitting next to a Nobel Prize laureate who had just won Nobel for Hubble telescope and the next mission, the John Webb telescope. And it was about astronomy. I'm sure Sarah can talk more about that. And during the Q&A, it was about adaptive optics, and this laureate just asked a question that just seemed, I knew the answer. Like, what's the big deal? Why is he asking that question? And I realized for this particular person, it was a valid question. They were curious about, this particular type of adaptive optics. And I had this conversation afterwards, and with the laureate, and I realized he has no fear of learning a new thing, and he has no kind of a public kind of hesitation to just learn new things, even after getting a Nobel. And from that day onwards, I just feel like I can ask the dumbest of the dumb question in any audience. And if I learn, and if I don't understand, I can always go ask my own students. They're always, are more resourceful and often smarter than the way I think. And I think that just kind of resets how I think about being curious.
It's interesting working in this environment. One of the things I often see is individuals who are so highly trained are really adept at answering questions or feeling comfortable in the areas they've been trained, but struggle immensely to recognize what they can serve and how to deploy that in a way that helps them grow into new areas. And those that can figure that out and can recognize that they know 80% or even 60% are often really phenomenal in being able to bridge into new fields and new areas. So there's a couple distinct questions around recognizing your own failures and sort of how you self-reflect. And I'm curious, how do you all, so tonight you came and talked about examples of failure and in the context of a story. How do you think about, in a day-to-day basis, your own failures? How do you process them? What do you do? How do you get around them? There's this idea of anchors where people go out and go skating or sailing or go to the gym or go running. I even have a colleague who talks about sitting in Boston traffic is actually a really good time that she has because it's just her in her car listening to Howard Stern, which I don't understand that part. But it's a way that she decompresses. It's a way that she processes and thinks about. Can you give some examples of ways you might do this?
Failure with a lower F and an uppercase F, you know, and when you're talking about on a day-to-day basis, they're the little things that are just part of they're the 20 times you fall down, but yeah, I mean, that's just part of the process. You know that's going to happen. And that's not the failure. That's the, 10,000 tries into, that's just part of the process. I don't think you think of that, or at least I don't think of that as a failure. You kind of say that's a part of what we're doing.
I'd like to hear how you get back on the board after you've come back from like that broken wrist. Like, how do you just get back on it?
That's a good question. It is.
Do you have to think through it, or do you just do it?
How we're built, especially when it comes to this stuff, when you're hurt, when you're physically hurting, like you hit hard. And as much as your mind, okay, look, when you're filming, you're trying maybe 300 tries, right? You're blasted, security guards just come, somebody called the cops, you have so many tries. And say the second out of 5 you get, you slam. And it hurts so bad your body's resonating, like it's just ringing. And you know at that stage what to do, like a lot of times that confirms it, and you're absolutely in that commitment mode where you're on whatever you're gonna try, like you're gonna throw your feet on. For the life of you, sometimes you cannot. Your body, when it hurts that badly, it won't allow you to, which gives you access to the sort of layered nature of how we're built that's slightly beyond the will sometimes. Sometimes you have to back off. It takes a while, like when you come back for something busted, generally your brain's more screwed up than your arm because you can't, it's healed before your brain is. It takes a while to get your confidence. That's the key thing. So.
Young, do you have thoughts on this?
I don't think about failures, and I focus on the positive in life each day. I also find, stuck in traffic and listen to NPR is very relaxing. And, in academia, sometimes it can be really hard, right? We get rejected left and right, and we might be not good at teaching nor research, and there's, we're surrounded by brilliant people. And so I think it's really helpful, at least for me, to focus on small steps of learning. And sometimes it's really about nature and us, right? As we discover law of nature, and itself is really beautiful. And it's not about, what path you have gone down, but really this journey of discovery is very fascinating. And so I think if one can focus on, at least in science or physical science, is really focusing on people and nature as we not necessarily competing with others, but rather than collectively how we can work together so we can discover more of the nature and tap into more of the unknown. I think whatever ways we can do it, each day is a success.
Awesome. I think we have time for one more question. And I think this goes to the heart of kind of really what this event is designed for. The question is that so many changes have occurred societally in the last decade, or that have raised the stakes and put young people under added pressure, increased competition, immigration restrictions, financial constraints, and subsequently have made it more costly for young people to take risks and fail in the pursuit of excellence. How should young people try to mitigate the barriers facing them in their pursuit of experimentation and innovation? And maybe if each of you could just give just a quick couple examples. Eva, do you want to start?
I think there's always some costs connected with your idea to be innovative or brilliant. I think it's a decision for this ups and down you have in life. And I think somehow we have to just to see that with an open eye and to know, okay, I decided, or you all decided to apply and to go to MIT or Harvard or whatever. And this is a path where you will have this ups and downs constantly. And for me, I decided this is how I want to have it, just because I'm curious, and it's boring to have a life where everything is, but it's more like this, but then you don't try to be whatever, innovative or find new things or whatever. And it's possible as well. I think I think you can have a life without these ups and downs, but I think it's a decision, and if we make ourselves aware of this, that we decided to do that, and that it's just natural, that everybody has these ups and downs, and there is failure, and you will think it never will be better again, but it will be better again. And what sometimes helps in this moment, what helps me, is not positive thinking, but negative thinking. So think what would be the worst thing that could happen now. And if you do that, really, you will find out it's not too bad. I just can go on with something else. And that's really good, I think.
Thank you. Ramesh?
I think I agree. It's a very, very challenging situation because I like to compare kind of startups versus big corporations. And in startups, there's plenty of freedom, even encouragement to take risks and fail and move on. But in big corporations, you can't. And I feel like as time has gone on, our nation has become less of a startup and more of a corporation, and same with MIT. And I think we have to figure out a way to make it feel like a startup, make it feel like it's a community that encourages, risk-taking and exploration. But I think that's why we are here. I think, the signs are everywhere. They're conspiring against us to take risks. But conferences like this are what's going to change the conversation. So I hope all of you will take this conversation forward to say, let's create environments where we can take risks in a low-stake environment and learn from them so we can go and do things that are high stakes.
Moving forward is very much like what we were talking about a minute ago about what do you do when you fail. There's the little, the 5,000 times you fall up and you're in the flow. You kind of get up and you dust yourself off and and then sometimes it's the big whack and you really got to take a reset. That's a different kind of thing. Time out, and you kind of get, and then you kind of move forward. It's the same thing going forward. Going forward, there's sort of a bubble in what you're doing, and you win some and you lose some, and you kind of get a feel, and then you take the next step. And so what young people have to do is figure out what that bubble is they're willing to play in to begin with. And very often, as graduate students, it's a disciplinary bubble. And then as a postdoc, it becomes an interdisciplinary bubble. So you sort of have mastered this one thing, and now you're the machine learning expert in the engine, something or other. But you sort of have to figure out how much you feel comfortable with playing to have that sense of mastery before you take the next step. And the risk piece is how big is the bubble you're willing to play in at step one.
Excellent. Sarah?
Just give a couple quick things. Like, we need a major course correction. Let's take MIT, for example. Do you know how hard it is to get into MIT? Sometimes I ask my students, okay, of course they had perfect grades and perfect SAT scores. But it's like, so, were you valedictorian? Yeah, Like, what team were you captain of? Oh, well, but that's still not enough. You have to have done something crazy or invented something. It's not even enough. And so it wasn't like that always. And so the world really needs to have a major fix to it. Yeah. What I'd say, though, is try to find something you love doing that you're also really good at, and that will be your path to success.
Yeah. Young?
Yes, I will essentially repeat the message that do what you like to do, right? So when we say follow your passion, curiosity, essentially it's do what you like to do, and regardless of failure, at least you're happy.
And Rodney, the final word?
Yeah, it's the same. I think, and I see this, when you have some degree of success, especially dudes coming up, yeah, you're a good AM in the early pro. And then what happens is a weird plateauing where they never become even a fraction of what their potential is. And something that strikes me again and again is getting what you wanted or think you wanted. It kind of quenches the fire that gets you there in the first place. unless it's sort of pinned to something more kind of permanent in its intangibility, which is that essence of just loving something for the sake of it. What would you be doing anyway? You know?
On that note, thank you so much. You get a round of applause for